Sometimes you learn a lesson and you forget that lesson, and then you make the same mistake twice and have to relearn it. And that's what I'm doing right now. Early on in my career, in one of the first deals I was ever involved in, we got a buyer under contract, and then about a week and a half before we were supposed to close, the lender had quit her job to move to a different company, so her boss took over the file. And after we got time to get acquainted with the file and see where it's at, he gave me a call to talk about it. And he told me that the file never should have been approved in the first place. The assets and the income were never fully looked at. Turns out that most of her income is unusable, and she was in the bottom barrel of a price range anyways. And then on top of that, she has not filed taxes in 7 years, so there was no tax returns to look over. So the deal fell apart. My buyer went from thinking that she was going to become a homeowner for the first time, being very excited. She was one of the most eager and motivated buyers I've ever worked with, even up until this point. And then the next day, I have to give her a call and tell her that she's not actually able to be approved, and she's not going to be able to buy a house. So I learned on that day that I need to make sure that any lender I'm using, whether it's one I recommend or whether it's one that they choose, I need to make sure that all the documents and all the assets were reviewed completely before we even get an approval. So now, when I get an approval letter from a lender that I trust, I know that there is no financing fell through. Not unless the buyer loses their job or they take a car loan out before closing or something like that. But as long as all the circumstances stay the same, we know that they're good to go. And I'm able to boast that when I am working in multiple offers and I call the sellers, I let them know my buyer is very strong. I know that all the documents are verified and everything. Well, now I'm in a deal again where I've been working with these people for a year, and so was the lender. We've been working with them since last February. It's a lender with Wells Fargo that I'd never worked with before. But he says that they're super solid. They're approved for $400,000, but they could even go higher. 400 is just the amount that they had applied for, and they got it, and we were shopping in a lower price range anyways. So they seem pretty strong. They have a lot of assets, looking great. So we get under contract finally after a year of looking, and we're supposed to close next Friday. And then 2 days ago, I get a call from the lender, and he said that he wants to let me know how things are going. Not looking too good. He says that a lot of their assets might be unusable because, as he put it, they move around cash like the mafia. They run two businesses, a used car business and some sort of like cell phone business. And for some reason, they have a lot of cash coming in. And then on top of that, they have cash moving in between each other's accounts, like they're doing electronic transfers to each other's bank accounts, and they're investing into Robinhood and then taking it out when they get any gains and then transferring it back over to the other person. It's just a huge mess of just money being transferred all over the place. And then on top of that, one of their tax returns apparently has some sort of spike in income that raised a red flag in underwriting, and they need some kind of document. And he said, if we can't get this document to see what this spike in income is, then that could, kill the deal. And even if we get that, then we still got to figure out the assets and everything. These are both things that should have been taken care of a year ago before we even got the approval letter. Why would you as a lender want to waste a whole year working with somebody when you don't even know what their cash situation is like? I'm thinking back to whether or not I really investigated this to figure out how well he looked into it. And I swear that I did ask him if everything was looked over, and he said yes, but I don't know for sure. It was partly my responsibility to make sure that they're working with a good lender. I feel like I let them down in that way. Because it's ridiculous that this is just coming up now. When I work with my preferred lender, there's been situations where my buyers have assets, but because of the requirements that the banks have for being able to trace that income and that cash, he had them open up a bank account before we even started looking at houses, and he aged those funds in that new bank account for a couple of months, so that way when they had to provide bank statements, the accounts were aged in the account, and it's not huge spikes of cash coming in and out of the account. So this is something that easily could have been prepared for, because I do have the money to buy the house. It's just that they're moving cash because nobody told them not to do that. The tax return thing, I have no idea about that. I mean, maybe it was doomed from the beginning. But again, I mean, That's one of the basic things that you should be asking for as a lender, as far as my understanding, as a humble realtor, that you should be looking at their tax return information before you even approve them. But here we are, supposed to close next Friday. I'm dealing with a nightmare of a seller's agent on the other side. So the last thing I wanted to do was even ask her for a closing date extension, let alone have to let her know that, oh, remember when I said that I have a really strong buyer and we always verify documents before approval? Well, actually, that's not true. Sorry. But I think that's what's coming because it's not looking too good. So yeah, the lesson I'm relearning here is make sure that whatever lender you're working with has actually looked into your buyer's finances and is not just giving out flip-in approvals and screwing everybody over. Because now my buyers have told their landlord that they purchased a house and they're not going to be extending their lease. And well, if they don't buy a house, so they have one more month to find a new place to rent. So that sucks.